In the theater of human interaction, we do not merely speak or act, we reflect. We are not isolated beings, but vessels of energy and unconscious projections. What you bring into the room, the world often sends back to you. Not as a copy, but as a revelation. When you awaken the shadow in others without intention, you enter a subtle, powerful, and often unacknowledged realm of influence. This influence has nothing to do with dominance, manipulation, or even conscious charisma. Instead, it arises from the quiet, unconscious resonance between the inner work you have done and the layers of unresolved material others still carry within themselves. The shadow, as Carl Jung taught, is not simply the dark or negative aspects of the human psyche. It is all that we repress, deny, or refuse to recognize within ourselves. It can be positive or negative, painful or glorious. It is the unintegrated aspect of the self. When you have made peace with significant parts of your own inner landscape, your anger, your fear, your envy, your pain, you become more whole, and with that wholeness comes a kind of energetic clarity. This clarity is not visible like a beam of light, but it is felt. It enters the spaces you occupy and subtly alters the atmosphere. You do not need to say much. Sometimes you say nothing at all, but the very fact of your presence begins to disturb what has long lain dormant or buried in others. You become a mirror, not because you are trying to be one, but because wholeness reflects fragmentation, like calm water reflects turbulence. People around you begin to feel things they have long avoided. They might feel exposed, emotionally stirred, or suddenly introspective. Sometimes they can't explain it. They might feel drawn to you, fascinated even, but also uncomfortable without knowing why. This is because your presence, without trying, is silently calling their unconscious into visibility. You are reminding them of what they have pushed down or away. Unhealed memories, suppressed truths, denied longings. It may feel to them as though you are doing something, as though you have looked into their soul, when in fact all you have done is show up in authenticity. The mirror is not at fault for showing the blemish, it simply reflects what is. The most difficult aspect of this is that you may often be misunderstood. People might accuse you of being too intense or too much, or they may push you away with little explanation. In truth, they are not reacting to you, they are reacting to the parts of themselves that they are unwilling to face. And since they are not yet conscious of this dynamic, the easiest path is to externalize the discomfort. You become the problem in their eyes, not the internal tension they are being forced to feel. This projection can be painful. It can isolate you. It can leave you questioning what you did wrong, when in reality, you have simply done the inner work that others are still avoiding. But with time, if you remain steady and compassionate in your energy, some of those very same people may return. After reflection, after inner movement, they may begin to see that your presence catalyzed something important. They may even thank you, though this is not your goal. The point is not to be a teacher, a guide, or a healer. The point is to live authentically. It just so happens that authenticity has power, not a power that dominates, but a power that illuminates. This illumination is a natural byproduct of inner integration. When you are not at war with your own psyche, you emit a frequency that speaks of safety, depth, and truth. People sense that they cannot pretend around you, not because you expose them, but because they cannot maintain their own illusions in your field. You bring out truth because you are truth in motion, and truth always agitates that which is false. It's important to understand that this is not always comfortable or appreciated. The ego, which guards the shadow, is clever. It seeks to avoid pain, to preserve the mask, to stay in familiar territory. When someone unknowingly destabilizes this inner construct through their mere presence, the ego may strike back, often in subtle or covert ways. This is why many energetic mirrors experience relationships where they are alternately adored and rejected. One moment, someone feels seen and safe with you. The next, they feel vulnerable and exposed. You haven't changed. What has changed is their relationship with their own inner content. You were the catalyst. This dynamic often shows up in close relationships, friendships, romantic connections, family dynamics. At first, there is a magnetic pull. The person senses that you see beyond surfaces. They feel an unusual depth, a recognition that touches their soul. But soon this intimacy becomes a mirror that is too honest. And if they are not ready to face themselves, they may withdraw or even lash out. Being an energetic mirror also requires a great deal of responsibility and self-awareness. Just as you reflect others, they reflect you. Their shadows may trigger remnants of your own, and so you must stay vigilant. This is not a journey of superiority or spiritual pride. It is a mutual unfolding. To see others clearly is also to see yourself more clearly. If someone's anger, jealousy, or judgment rises in your presence, it is worth asking, is this entirely theirs, or is it resonating with a frequency in me that has yet to be fully integrated? This is the great spiritual discipline of those who awaken shadows, the ability to discern projection from truth and to stay humble in the face of both. At times, it will feel heavy. You may enter a room and instantly feel a wave of tension that does not belong to you. You may find that people seem more emotional around you, more open, more confrontational, or more confused. And if you do not understand this dynamic, you may begin to doubt your sanity. You may ask, why do people react so strongly to me? Why do strangers tell me their secrets? Why do some people hate me without knowing me? These are signs not of flaw but of function. You are a reflector, and not all mirrors are welcome in a world of masks. You may also notice that others begin to do their inner work simply by being in proximity to you. Again, this is not because you are instructing or fixing them. It is because your state of being models integration. You represent something their soul remembers and longs for: congruence, truth, inner harmony. This longing awakens as a restlessness and sometimes as resistance, but it is always an invitation. Your presence offers no answers, only a question. Are you willing to meet yourself? The journey of being a mirror is not about becoming someone else's therapist, savior, or guru. In fact, the healthiest mirrors are those who set clear boundaries and who remain rooted in their own path. They do not absorb what is not theirs, nor do they take credit for the awakenings they inspire. They walk with presence, clarity, and detachment, not coldness, but inner neutrality. They know that the reflections they provoke are sacred and not to be used for ego gratification. Over time, you may also develop a greater sensitivity to subtle energy. You may feel when someone is withholding truth. You may detect the unsaid beneath polite words. This sensitivity is not always pleasant. It can be overwhelming, but it is part of the mirror's gift to see the unseen, to feel the unfelt, to make the unconscious a little more conscious, simply by existing in alignment. In the world of energetic dynamics, nothing is accidental. If you find yourself constantly stirring emotion, catalyzing introspection, or being a trigger for others, ask yourself, what is my inner state? What have I healed? What am I radiating? If your answers point to honesty, vulnerability, and wholeness, then you can rest in the understanding that you are fulfilling a vital role in the tapestry of human evolution. You are walking proof that the unconscious wants to be made conscious, and that the soul, when reflected, seeks to grow. This journey can be isolating. Mirrors are often left out, misunderstood, or judged, but the truth is, every sacred mirror in history, from mystics and prophets to healers and revolutionaries, has walked this path. You are not alone, even when you feel lonely. Your gift is not something to be diminished, even when others reject it. You are not here to be accepted by all. You are here to be authentic, and through that authenticity, to awaken whatever truth lies dormant in others. If you can accept this role, not as a burden but as a service, you will begin to find peace. Not everyone will understand you, but those who are ready will see themselves in your reflection, and in that recognition, they will begin to reclaim what was lost. And that, more than any speech or teaching, is how the world changes. One mirror, one awakening at a time. To be someone onto whom others project easily is to live in a constant theater of unconscious roles, identities, and expectations that are not yours to carry, yet often become tangled around you without warning. This phenomenon of being the subject of projection goes far deeper than misunderstanding or assumption. It is a psychological transference that speaks more to the other person's hidden inner world than to any objective truth about you. Carl Jung explained that projection is one of the most common and potent mechanisms of the human psyche. When a person is unwilling or unable to acknowledge parts of themselves, whether those parts are dark and repressed or light and unrealized, they will unknowingly assign those traits to others. You, without intending it, become the screen upon which their inner movie plays out. This can be both flattering and painful. On the positive end of the spectrum, people may look at you and see their ideal self. They might project strength, wisdom, kindness, or even a savior-like aura onto you. You may find that others become quickly attached, telling you that you just understand them, or feel like home, or are different from everyone else. While these sentiments may feel comforting or affirming at first, they often come loaded with expectations, silent and unspoken contracts that you never agreed to. You are no longer simply yourself, you are now a character in someone else's personal mythos, embodying a role they have created based on needs they haven't acknowledged. This idealization can be subtle or intense. Someone might see you as their healer, their soulmate, their guide, or their hero. You might notice that they begin to depend on you emotionally, look to you for validation, or even place you on a pedestal. But the pedestal is precarious. The moment you fail to live up to the imagined version of you that they've constructed, when you show a flaw, set a boundary, or behave in a way they didn't foresee, the same energy that lifted you up turns into disappointment, resentment, or even betrayal. The swing from admiration to disillusionment can be swift and jarring, and you, having simply been yourself, are left in the confusing wake of emotions that were never truly yours to begin with. Equally, and sometimes more distressingly, people may project negative qualities onto you. You may find yourself suddenly distrusted, disliked, or judged without cause. Someone might accuse you of being arrogant when you've simply been confident, or cold when you've merely been reserved. You might be seen as controlling, selfish, intimidating, or manipulative, even when your intentions have been neutral or benevolent. This happens not because you have demonstrated these traits, but because the person projecting has not integrated these aspects within themselves. What they cannot accept or reconcile in their own nature, they assign to others, often to those who, ironically, have already done the work to face those same qualities internally. To be a frequent target of projection is to live in a kind of psychic spotlight. Your very presence brings something forth in people, not because you demand it, but because you reflect it. And this reflection, even when unintended, can disturb the balance of their inner narratives. They may not know why they feel threatened by you, or why they are drawn to you, or why they oscillate between the two. The truth is, you are acting as a psychological mirror, not by speaking or teaching, but simply by existing in a state of self-awareness that highlights the unconscious workings in others. This dynamic can become particularly charged in relationships that carry emotional depth, whether romantic, familial, or platonic. In close relationships, the stakes are higher, and the projections are often more deeply rooted. A partner may project the qualities of a parent they long to be accepted by. A friend may see in you the version of themselves they wish they could become. A colleague may transfer onto you the authority figure they resent. In each case, the projection is not really about you. It is about the unresolved emotional history that the person carries. You become the symbolic figure onto which they reenact old wounds, unmet needs, or unfulfilled fantasies. Being on the receiving end of this can feel bewildering, even painful. You may sense that you're never fully seen for who you are. No matter how honest or transparent you try to be, people often interact not with your true self, but with the version of you they've created in their mind. This disconnect can lead to feelings of alienation and frustration. You may find yourself trying to clarify your intentions, explain your actions, or defend your character, only to realize that you are arguing with a shadow, a phantom perception that has nothing to do with reality. In these moments, it's essential to remember that projection is not inherently malicious. It is, in fact, a natural part of human psychology. We all do it, to some degree. We see in others what we cannot yet see in ourselves. We romanticize, demonize, or idolize, not because others have changed, but because our own lens is distorted. The difference for those who frequently become the object of projection is that they often operate from a place of inner clarity that acts as a trigger. Your presence challenges the other person's constructed self-image, and rather than confront the internal dissonance, they externalize it, placing it onto you. If you are someone who experiences this often, developing discernment and healthy boundaries becomes crucial. You must learn to recognize when someone is relating to you authentically versus when they are engaging with their projection of you. This awareness can help you navigate relationships with greater compassion and detachment. It is not your job to fulfill anyone's fantasies, nor is it your burden to carry the weight of their unresolved pain. You are responsible only for your own integrity, not for how others interpret your being. Over time, you may also begin to see patterns. Certain types of people may be more drawn to you. You may notice recurring dynamics, where you are cast in similar roles: the teacher, the rescuer, the betrayer, the threat. These patterns offer clues about the projections at play and can help you better understand the emotional themes that you evoke in others. Awareness of these patterns doesn't mean you can always avoid them, but it does mean you can respond to them with more groundedness and less confusion. It is also important to cultivate self-compassion. Being projected upon constantly can take a toll on your sense of self. It can lead to internalized guilt, especially when people react to you with intense emotion or blame you for things beyond your control. You might begin to question your own identity or feel pressure to meet others' expectations just to avoid conflict. But the more you remain rooted in your authenticity, the more you refuse to shrink, perform, or morph into someone else's fantasy, the freer you become. Paradoxically, the more you embrace your wholeness, the more you may invite projection, but also the more you inspire others to reclaim their own disowned parts. Your refusal to play roles can, over time, help others recognize the illusions they've created. This process isn't always fast or smooth. Sometimes people will walk away, sometimes they will resist, but in other cases they will begin to awaken. They will see that what they loved or hated in you was a reflection of something within themselves, and that realization can spark profound growth. You are not here to be everything for everyone. You are here to be true. That truth, while disruptive to false narratives, is also healing in its essence. It shows others what is possible. It says you can be whole, you can be seen, you can stop pretending, not by telling them this, but by being an example of it. Living with this awareness can help you stay balanced amid the shifting tides of other people's perceptions. When you are idealized, you can remain humble, knowing that it is not about you, but about what you represent. When you are vilified, you can remain grounded, knowing that it is not about you, but about what they fear in themselves. You do not need to convince or correct anyone. You only need to remain aligned with your inner truth. Eventually, this alignment becomes your shield. It protects you from absorbing the projections and expectations that swirl around you. It allows you to walk in the world with clarity, even when others are confused. And it gives you the strength to love people as they are. To be someone onto whom others project easily is not a curse, though it can feel like one. It is a calling, a strange and often solitary calling, to hold space for the unspoken stories of the human soul, and in doing so, to illuminate the path back to self, not just for others, but for yourself as well. There is a quiet, invisible pull that some people carry, an energy that acts as a lighthouse for those lost in their own emotional storms. If you are someone who draws in the wounded and the searching, you may not fully understand why. It can feel at times as though you are a magnet for sorrow, for vulnerability, for souls who are walking with invisible burdens. They find their way to you not because you have advertised yourself as a healer, a confidant, or a safe space, but because your very presence seems to resonate with something inside them that is still aching to be seen. But this attraction is not rooted in pity or even intentional compassion. It is subtler than that. The people who are still in the process of finding themselves often gravitate toward those who feel stable, grounded, or emotionally awake. They are not necessarily aware of it, but something in your frequency, in the way you carry yourself, signals a kind of internal anchoring they may not yet have cultivated. You don't have to say anything profound or perform any grand gesture. The simple act of being, without pretense or performance, is sometimes enough to inspire others to open themselves in ways they haven't dared before. You might notice how strangers tell you their life stories, how acquaintances confide in you far more than is typical, or how people you've just met seem to instinctively trust you with their inner truths. It's not uncommon to be sitting in a quiet room and someone begins to cry, not because of anything you did, but because in your safeness, they finally feel safe enough to unravel. This is the silent power of presence. It is not flashy or dominant. It is not about fixing or even guiding. It is about embodying a state of emotional openness and honesty that invites others to do the same. Often, those who are wounded or searching have been denied this space. They've been told, either explicitly or implicitly, that their feelings are too much, their needs too messy, or their pain too inconvenient. So they hide it. They bury it beneath roles, personas, or distractions. But the pain doesn't go away. It waits. And when they encounter someone who has made peace with their own pain, who doesn't recoil from discomfort or shut down around emotional intensity, it's as though an inner door swings open. They feel they can breathe, even if only momentarily. This dynamic, while beautiful in many ways, can also be emotionally taxing. When you are constantly surrounded by those who are in various stages of healing or self-discovery, it can feel as though you're carrying the emotional weight of others on top of your own. There may be days when you feel exhausted, not because you've been physically busy, but because you've absorbed the unspoken stories, griefs, and longings of those around you. The energetic toll of being a container for other people's pain can be immense, if not managed with awareness and care. It is crucial to understand that while your presence may offer comfort or clarity to others, you are not responsible for their healing. The line between being supportive and being codependent is delicate, and those who naturally attract the wounded often find themselves blurring it. You may feel compelled to help, to advise, to rescue, but healing is not something that can be done for someone. It is an internal journey, and the most powerful thing you can do is to hold space without trying to control the outcome. There is wisdom in restraint. Allowing someone to face their own depths while remaining a non-judgmental witness is often more healing than offering solutions. Your strength lies not in your ability to solve, but in your capacity to simply be with what is, without flinching, without fleeing, and without needing to change the narrative. This level of presence communicates something rare. You are safe here. You don't have to be perfect. You are allowed to feel everything you've been avoiding. It's important, too, to reflect on why you attract those who are still finding their footing. Often it is because you have walked through your own dark corridors and emerged with wisdom. Not just knowledge, but embodied understanding. You know what it feels like to be shattered, to be unsure, to yearn for wholeness. This experiential knowing creates a kind of soul signature. Others pick up on it, even unconsciously. They sense that you are someone who won't judge their brokenness because you have made peace with your own. Your compassion doesn't come from pity, it comes from identification. However, this identification can be a double-edged sword. If you are not grounded in your own healing, you may find that you attract people whose wounds mirror your own. This can create entanglements, relationships where boundaries dissolve, where emotional lines blur, where your sense of self becomes enmeshed with another's pain. In such cases, the attraction is not just a one-way pull. You may also be seeking something in them, a reflection, a validation, a familiar pattern. Recognizing this is not about blame, it's about reclaiming clarity. The more you understand your own motives, conscious or unconscious, the more you can engage with others from a place of wholeness rather than need. Another aspect of attracting the wounded and searching is the potential for being misunderstood or misread. Some may mistake your openness for romantic interest, or your attentiveness for a promise of emotional rescue. Others may unconsciously expect you to hold their pain indefinitely, to be endlessly available, to never turn away, and when you assert a boundary or say no, they may feel betrayed, not because you've wronged them, but because you've interrupted their fantasy of what you represented. This can lead to painful disconnections, accusations, or guilt. It is vital, then, to practice boundary setting as an act of love, not just for yourself, but also for others. Holding space for someone's growth does not mean shrinking your own needs or sacrificing your emotional balance. There will also be those who find your presence unsettling, not because you are unkind or harsh, but because you stir something within them that they are not yet ready to face. You may notice people pulling away, going quiet, or avoiding you after moments of deep vulnerability. This is not a reflection of failure. Often it is a sign that something meaningful was touched, a memory, a fear, a buried truth. And while they may not yet have the capacity to integrate it, the seed has been planted. Transformation does not always announce itself. Sometimes it begins in silence, in solitude, in distance. And then there are the moments when someone returns. After days, weeks, or years, they come back with clearer eyes, with gratitude, with stories of how something shifted because of a single conversation, a simple moment in your presence. These moments are reminders that your energy, even when it felt unnoticed or unappreciated, had an impact. You were a mirror, a compass, a doorway. Not because you tried to be, but because you allowed yourself to be present with truth. Attracting the wounded and the searching is not about being a savior. It is about being a mirror that reflects potential, a safe harbor where the storm can momentarily calm, a reminder that there is life beyond pain. It is a sacred role, but it is also one that must be approached with discernment. You must know when to lean in, when to step back, when to offer, and when to let go. Over time, you will develop an internal compass, one that helps you recognize the difference between someone who is ready to grow and someone who is unconsciously looking for a surrogate for their unresolved traumas. You will learn to trust your instincts, to read between the lines, to offer presence without losing yourself in someone else's emotional landscape. Ultimately, this attraction is a gift, though it does not always feel like one. It means that your presence carries a frequency that invites truth, that you live in a way that whispers to others, It's okay to feel. It's okay to question. It's okay to search. And while you may never fully know the ripples you create in the lives of those who cross your path, you can rest in the knowledge that your presence is meaningful. You are not here to fix the world, but simply to be a light for those still finding their way. And sometimes, that is more than enough. There are those who walk into a room and remain largely unaffected by the energies that swirl within it. They maintain their emotional footing regardless of the conversations, tensions, or dynamics unfolding around them. But for others, those who are energetically sensitive, emotionally attuned, or deeply empathic, the experience of entering a crowd can be disorienting, overwhelming, and profoundly confusing. If you are someone who experiences emotional whiplash in crowds, you know that your mood, energy, and even physical state can shift rapidly depending on the unseen emotional currents surrounding you. This shift is often sudden, intense, and inexplicable, leaving you wondering why you feel drained, anxious, or even euphoric without any clear reason tied to your own life or inner world. Emotional whiplash in crowded spaces is not just about being shy, introverted, or overwhelmed by noise. It goes deeper than surface-level overstimulation. It is about picking up on emotional energies, unspoken frustrations, hidden sadness, suppressed anxiety, or bubbling joy that others may not even be aware they're emitting. These energies are subtle but powerful, and for those who are sensitive to them, they can crash over like invisible waves, changing the emotional landscape of your inner world in seconds. You might walk into a room feeling calm and grounded, only to be hit with a wave of nervous energy that leaves you restless and unfocused. Or you might be laughing with a group of people and suddenly feel a heaviness in your chest, a sadness that wasn't there before, but now sits with you as if it's your own. What makes this experience particularly disorienting is that the emotions don't come with labels. You don't always know where they came from or why you're feeling them. You may ask yourself, is this mine? Did I miss something? Am I overreacting? The answer is rarely simple. The human emotional field is not neatly compartmentalized. Emotions move, bleed, merge in crowds. Where many nervous systems interact simultaneously, those energies can amplify, tangle, and ricochet off one another like invisible sound waves. And if you are naturally open, you may find yourself absorbing more than your share, almost like an emotional sponge. This absorption can manifest in many ways. You might feel exhausted after a social event, even if nothing particularly stressful happened. You might get headaches, tightness in your chest, stomach discomfort, or fatigue. These are not necessarily signs of illness, but of energetic overload. Your system is trying to process more emotional information than it was meant to, often without conscious awareness or preparation. This emotional whiplash can swing you from joy to melancholy, from clarity to confusion, from peace to irritability, all within the span of a few interactions or conversations. And often, it's only after leaving the crowd that you begin to sort out what feelings were truly yours and what were simply borrowed. Crowds intensify these dynamics because the collective emotional atmosphere is often unspoken. Social conventions encourage masks, small talk, and surface-level interaction, while underneath a wide range of emotional undercurrents remain unexpressed. But even if those around you are not openly expressing their stress, anger, or insecurity, those feelings are still present, moving through body language, tone, micro-expressions, and energetic vibrations. If you're attuned, consciously or unconsciously, you feel it. It's not that you're looking for it. You're simply built to register it, to receive it, like a sensitive antenna, catching frequencies others don't even know are transmitting. This kind of sensitivity can feel like a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it makes you deeply compassionate, intuitive, and understanding. You can feel when someone needs comfort before they say a word. You can read the mood of a room with precision, noticing tension where others see only politeness. You are often the person others feel safe around because you instinctively adjust your tone, pace, and presence to match or soothe those around you. But on the other hand, this same sensitivity can feel like an emotional roller coaster that you didn't have to ride. It can leave you overwhelmed by feelings that aren't yours, disconnected from your own emotional needs, or so energetically scattered that you struggle to make decisions or feel grounded. One of the most challenging aspects of experiencing emotional whiplash in crowds is the invisibility of it. From the outside, you might appear calm, engaged, even joyful, but inside you are tracking dozens of subtle signals, managing waves of emotion, and trying to discern what's real versus what's absorbed. Others may not see the effort you're making to stay present, or the energy it takes to keep from shutting down. They may not understand why you leave events early, need time alone after socializing, or seem emotionally distant after being in a group. And you may struggle to explain it because the experience is difficult to articulate. How do you describe an emotional landscape that shifted before you even knew it was changing? The key to navigating this sensitivity is awareness and self-ownership. First, it's important to recognize that being emotionally reactive in crowds is not a flaw. It's a sign of your emotional intelligence, your capacity to feel deeply, and your ability to sense what others cannot. However, it also means you need to develop tools and practices to differentiate between what belongs to you and what does not. This begins with grounding. Regular practices that bring you back into your body and your breath. Whether it's deep breathing, walking in nature, meditation, or physical movement, these practices help re-establish your emotional center. They create a buffer between your emotional core and the noise of the collective field. Boundary setting is also crucial, even if it's not always verbal. You can set energetic boundaries by becoming conscious of where your awareness goes in a crowd. If you find yourself scanning the room, taking in everyone's mood, gently redirect your focus inward. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? What's mine? This small act of checking in can help reduce the pull to absorb everything around you. Sometimes, even holding a grounding object, a stone, a piece of jewelry, something tangible, can serve as a physical anchor that reminds you of your own presence amid the chaos. Another powerful practice is emotional clearing. After being in a crowd, take time to decompress. You might journal, take a shower, or simply sit in silence and ask yourself, what am I carrying that isn't mine? Imagine releasing those emotions like fog dispersing in the wind. Visualization is not just a spiritual exercise, it's a psychological reset that allows you to return to your own emotional baseline. It's also worth noting that emotional whiplash in crowds doesn't only come from negative energy. Sometimes joy, excitement, or spiritual high energy can also be overwhelming. You might find yourself euphoric one moment and completely depleted the next. Emotional extremes, even positive ones, require energy to process. So even after uplifting events, it's important to give yourself space to recalibrate. Just because the emotion felt good doesn't mean it was sustainable or truly your own. Over time, you may begin to notice patterns, certain types of environments, people, or group dynamics that trigger stronger emotional swings. This awareness can help you make more informed choices about where and how you engage socially. You might learn to prioritize smaller gatherings over large crowds, or to take breaks during long events. You might even start to design your schedule with emotional recovery in mind, knowing that one night of socializing may require a day of solitude to return to center. Perhaps most importantly, this sensitivity invites a deeper relationship with yourself. The more you learn to listen to your own emotional rhythm, the more resilient and clear you become. You stop seeing your sensitivity as a liability and begin to honor it as a strength, a finely tuned instrument that can sense subtle truths, offer quiet support, and navigate the emotional terrain of others with grace. But that grace must begin with you. It must begin with recognizing your needs, honoring your limits, and choosing presence over people-pleasing. Experiencing emotional whiplash in crowds is not about fragility, it is about energetic depth. You feel the world with open nerves and an unguarded heart. That is not a weakness, it is a capacity for profound connection. But like any gift, it requires care, attention, and boundaries. And when honored, it allows you to walk into any room, not as someone who is overwhelmed, but as someone who can observe, feel, and choose what to carry, and what to let pass through like wind across a lake. There are people who, without consciously trying, become catalysts for profound change in the lives of those around them. If transformation seems to follow you, it's not because you force it, nor because you loudly preach personal development, but because your very way of being naturally invites people to shed their old skins. It can be a strange experience to notice that people seem to pivot after knowing you, that they start to change jobs, leave relationships, question their beliefs, shift spiritual paths, or confront patterns they had previously ignored. Often, you're not even aware of how deeply your presence is affecting them until long after. Someone reaches out to say, "That conversation stayed with me," or "You made me think differently," or "After meeting you, something changed." And often, it had nothing to do with what you said, it was who you were, the energy you carried, the quiet permission you offered to become more real. Transformation that follows you is not always welcomed with joy. It can stir resistance, denial, and even rejection. Because when people are confronted, even gently, with the truth of their own potential, they also have to face the parts of themselves they've buried. You might think you're having a casual interaction, but the other person walks away feeling exposed, shaken, or inspired, sometimes all at once. This isn't because you are superior or enlightened, but because you have likely walked through fires of your own. You have unraveled layers, confronted inner demons, questioned your reality, and rebuilt your identity from places of deep introspection. That kind of inner work doesn't just stay inside you, it radiates outward. It shifts how you speak, how you listen, how you show up in the world. And when others are around you, they sense it. Not consciously, perhaps, but viscerally. They feel that they cannot remain asleep in your presence, and so their psyche begins to stir. You might notice that old friends drift away after spending time with you. It's not always because of a rupture or conflict, but because something in them has been activated, a longing they didn't know they had, or a discomfort they're not ready to address. You might notice that people seem to evolve quickly when they enter your life. They start asking questions they avoided before. They pursue paths they'd been afraid of. They confront truths they've sidestepped for years. And while some embrace this movement, others find it threatening. They may unconsciously associate you with upheaval. Because knowing you forces a kind of mirror into their hands. They begin to see what they've outgrown. They begin to realize what is no longer aligned. And often, that awareness brings both gratitude and grief. To be someone who embodies transformation is to constantly live at the edge of what is being born and what is being released. You are not immune to the same process you catalyze in others. In fact, you are often living through your own cycles of death and rebirth again and again. You know what it's like to feel lost, to question everything, to let go of identities that no longer fit. This familiarity with change becomes a kind of energetic permission. People sense that you won't judge them for being in flux, that you won't cling to their past selves, that you can hold space for their evolution without needing them to be stable or predictable. And that, more than anything, allows them to begin changing. There is also a natural intensity that often comes with this energy. People may describe you as intense, even if you're soft-spoken. Your presence has a way of making superficiality difficult. Small Small talk might die quickly around you. Conversations turn inward. Silences grow heavy with meaning. You may notice that people either open up deeply to you or avoid you altogether. This is not a reflection of your worth, but of their ready. Transformation is not a comfortable process. It asks people to let go of safety, to step into the unknown, to risk pain in the name of truth. And not everyone is ready. Some will be drawn to you like a moth to flame, only to retreat once the heat gets too close. Others will orbit quietly, watching from a distance, until they are ready to step into their own fire. Being a carrier of transformative energy can feel lonely at times. You may find yourself between worlds, unable to fully connect with those who cling to the past, yet not always feeling understood by those still in transition. You may crave relationships where you don't have to hold the mirror, where you can simply be, without always triggering growth in others. And yet, part of your path is to walk with this gift, even when it feels like a bird, because for those who are ready, your presence is a kind of sacred ignition. You don't give them answers, you awaken the questions. You don't map their path, you make them aware that a path exists. And that awareness, alone, can change the course of a life. You may also notice that systems, workplaces, or communities begin to shift when you arrive, not because you're trying to reform them, but because your presence makes dysfunction harder to ignore. You ask the hard questions, you name the elephant in the room, you highlight what has been quietly tolerated. This can make you a threat in environments where silence and denial have been used to maintain comfort. But it can also make you a liberator in spaces where change was overdue but unspoken. You bring truth into places that have been padded with illusions. And while that truth may be uncomfortable, it is also cleansing. There is a sacred neutrality in the transformation you bring. You don't need people to change. You don't demand they evolve. You simply exist in such alignment with your own journey that others are inspired, or challenged, to begin their own. The most powerful change you create is unspoken. It's in your integrity. It's in your boundaries. It's in your willingness to walk away from what no longer serves, even when it's hard. Others watch, even if they don't admit it. They notice, they feel it, and somewhere deep within, they begin to wonder what might be possible if they, too, gave themselves permission to change. There are also seasons to this energy. Sometimes transformation follows you loudly, with dramatic shifts, bold decisions, and visible awakenings. Other times it is quiet, a subtle nudge, a whispered insight, a seed planted in silence. You may not always see the results, you may not get closure or acknowledgement, but the ripples exist, the changes continue long after the conversation ends, long after the connection fades. You may pass through someone's life for a brief moment, never to return, but that moment becomes a hinge in their story, a turning point they never forget. Living with this gift also requires discernment. Not everyone who is drawn to you is meant to walk with you. Some are only meant to be touched by your energy briefly, to be sparked into movement, and then to find their own way. It is not your job to carry them, nor to stay where you no longer feel growth. Part of your medicine is your willingness to move forward, to keep evolving, even when it means leaving comfort behind. This is what inspires others most deeply. Not your perfection, but your devotion to truth, to becoming, to walking the path with authenticity. In many ways, transformation doesn't just follow you, it is you. You are the living embodiment of what it means to change, to grow, to let go, to begin again. You have been forged in the fires of your own trials, and now you carry that fire wherever you go. It warms some, it burns others, but it always brings light. And in a world so often lost in the dark, your presence is a kind of awakening, a call to remember, to shed, to rise. You don't have to force it. You don't have to try. You only have to be what you already are. the rest will follow. So I ask you, are you a mirror? Do you sense the emotional tides of others, carry their reflections, and still return to your inner light? If so, do not shrink from this calling. It is not a burden, it is a sacred invitation. A reminder that in seeing others, you are also seen. That in reflecting others, you are reflecting the divine spark within yourself. Thank you.